Anybody worth their salt when it comes to fighting games will tell you that the best characters are the ones who can do a little bit of everything. Specialists can be good, of course, but some of the best characters are those who have a way to approach every situation. Speedy enough to not be slow, strong enough to not be weak, and have tools for everything you could run into. Those are the marks of a really good character. But sometimes what's better than having an answer for everything is having one answer and just going for it. It's common to hear when picking up a character that you pick them up because they have that one move. Why did you pick Urian in Third Strike? I want to do Aegis setups. Why'd you pick Cyrax and MK1? I want to use the net. These moves that make an entire kit click together and serve as the backbone for an entire playstyle. That's giving a bit too much credit to the guys we're talking about today, though, saying they have a kit. What happens when a character is unremarkable or even bad, but has a single move that makes them a nightmare to fight against? These are one-move wonders, and they're fascinating to talk about in regards to fighting games. For a single move to make a character viable, that move has to be unbelievably strong, enough to make up for an entire rest of a moveset. Today, I want to look at these one-move wonders, see why they need to be carried, and see just how far that move can carry them. A great place to start is a game where the entire roster has a really nice balance to it, which makes the weaker characters a lot easier to root out. And when I think balanced, I think Marvel vs. Capcom 2. That's because I have no idea what balance means. There is a very, very small pool of fighting games that encapsulate just what I love about the fighting game community. And if there was a game picked to represent the whole thing, it's a close race between Third Strike, Super Smash Bros. Melee, and Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Something about the presentation, the music, the moments that have become associated with it, everything about it just gives me a warm feeling of community that means so much to me. That said, objectively the game is an unbalanced mess. For those who don't know the makeup of the Marvel 2 metagame, prepare to see a lot of Magneto, Storm, Cable, and Sentinel, because these 4 characters are pretty much on every team. Usually 2 of them, often 3 of them. These 4 are the god tier in Marvel 2, and it's hard for the other characters to shine through past this impenetrable top layer. But a few do. Cyclops can hang with the top tiers, Dr. Doom is no slouch, Strider is there to remind you there's a Capcom half to it too. These are not uncommon picks to see. One character that you're going to see pretty often in high-level Marvel vs. Capcom 2, but not for very long, is Captain Commando. Captain Commando had been a mainstay of the franchise up to Marvel 2, partially because he was supposed to be Capcom's mascot. Captain Commando. Capcom. Capcom. You ever name yourself after your boss for brownie points? Captain Commando is a top 15 character in Marvel vs. Capcom 2, which means he has to be incredible, right? Well, not only is Cap considered a pretty bad character in MVC 2, the footage of him in tournament only lasts for about a second when he does show up. Despite that, he's still one of the most used characters in the game. How's that work? So assessing Captain Commando, as well as most characters in Marvel 2, is really easy. Since you don't have to ask what he does well, you have to ask what he does well against the god tiers. And in his case, it's not a lot. Captain Commando's combo game is weak. Marvel 2 is all about getting into the air, and that's something Commando struggles with. He just doesn't have the combo extension to put a launcher into his combos naturally. He's stuck throwing them out raw, or maybe linking into one after a single hit. This is made worse by his terrible air mobility. Captain Commando doesn't have an air dash. He doesn't have a double jump, he just goes up and then comes down. If Magneto is up there too, he's also coming down a corpse. His playstyle is also kinda gimmicky. The best parallel I can draw is to Captain Ginyu in Fighters, with quarter circle forward plus light kick, heavy kick, or light kick and heavy punch, calling in the other playable characters from Captain Commando's game. It's not quite as strong as Ginyu's version of it, because you can't spam out assists the way that he can spam out Ginyu Force members, but it can still be kinda tricky to deal with. His other specials, though? Not really worthwhile. Captain Fire and Captain Kick aren't great. His supers can be decent, but not enough to make the character worth playing. Okay, so he stinks. Sounds about right for a character nicknamed Captain Suckass. Can't accuse Marvel 2 players of being too clever. How is it that Commando keeps finding his way onto high-level Marvel 2 teams? I mean, it's for tax purposes, right? Like he's a write-off? Kinda, yeah. One of the big system changes in Marvel 2 was the reintroduction of variable assists. Whereas the previous game included a series of dedicated assist characters who got in the way of you picking Colossus, Marvel 2 returned the old method of choosing assist moves for each member of your team. These would usually take the form of one of their special moves. So by selecting Spider-Man as an assist, you could either have him use Web Swing, Web Ball, or Spider Sting. Well, on Commando, one of the assists you can set is his beta assist, Captain Corridor. I didn't talk about Captain Corridor with the rest of his special moves because I thought it might be rude to make Captain Corridor breathe bitch air. Captain Corridor is Commando's final special move, and it's absolutely unbelievable. Commando slams the ground and creates a pillar of energy that stretches all the way to the top of the screen, dealing loads of damage while making Commando totally invincible while performing it. It's legitimately one of the best special moves in the game because it does so much. It cuts off the screen thanks to its size and especially height. It's invincible, so if you catch the opponent out with a lengthy animation that's not invincible itself, you can tear into them from there. It deals great damage, which means you don't have to spend as much time comboing, which gives them less time to fight back. It's incredible! On Commando, it's the move that keeps him from bumming it at the bottom of the tier with Wolverine and Wolverine But Bone in it. But since it's one of his assist moves, now every team in the game gets access to it. Just one problem though, if you take the move, you gotta take Commando with it. And to do that, you basically sacrifice a character slot. For a team of 2 god tiers though, like Cable and Sentinel, the choice is all too simple. And Commando is invited on the team. That's what I'm talking about when I say there's so little footage of competitive Commando that goes on for more than a second. He pops in for 1 second to use his assist, and then he hops back out. Captain Corridor is such an amazing move, it's worth as much as an entire character slot. There are no Captain Commando players. People who pick him don't play Captain Commando. They use him because he is a tool, a means to an end. Other characters like Tronbon and Psylocke fill a similar niche of being top tiers for their assists, and their assists alone. But both of them might be able to do a little damage when they're forced to play. It's tradition, if Commando is the last character, to just stop. Put the controller down. What do you think, Storm's gonna leave something to Barry? This does also lead into an interesting trade-off when putting Commando on a team. Since quarter circle forward plus assist will snap out a character and force in one of the assists. And you can use this to force the Captain Commando out and disable the assist by killing him. This is not a niche pick. This is not people trying to make a low-tier character work in a high-tier environment. No, Captain Corridor is such a good move that you're willing to handicap yourself just to get it. There is a history of Captain Commando being used in high-level Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Ever since the early days, it's been understood that he is the best assist character in the game. If you have a competent enough team that can do everything on its own, just throw in Captain Commando. The legacy of this move even transcends Captain Commando himself, since he didn't make it back into Marvel vs. Capcom 3. A character who did make it in, though, was Dante, and for his A assist, he has Jam Session, a vertical, full-screen column that, while not invincible, does have a hitbox that covers Dante's entire body, and a super nasty amount of hit stun that leads to the one thing that Corridor didn't: combos. Knowing a character as weak as Commando can fight alongside the best of the best really gives you hope. Build a team out of your favorites and take on the world. Come on, Dan, Roll, and Servbot, show them what you're made. For our next character, we're looking for somebody who can stand on their own. This time, they'll actually be the one doing most of the fighting. The Muscle Grand Prix 2 discussions will continue until Blu-ray sales improve! Am I using this game as a means to get people to read Kinnikuman and watch Perfect Origin? Or am I talking about it because I genuinely love the game for its integration of wrestling into a 3D game, as well as its approachability for newcomers? Bananas don't have to be yellow or long, it can be two things at once. Ever heard of killing two birds with one stone? Speaking of stones, the mountain! Now we've talked about before that Muscle Grand Prix 2 is a pretty balanced game. It has its top tiers like Kinnikuman Zebra, Kinnikuman Super Phoenix, and Akuma Shogun. It has its low tiers like Scarface, Planet Man, and the Ninja, and everybody in between can get stuff done. A class of characters that almost solely inhabit the middle of the tier list are the big bodies, with characters like Big the Budo and Kinnikuman Big Body being scattered around the mid to high bottom tiers. So the connection seems to be you're a low tier character if your name has the word big in it. The only big body character who's able to break free and grasp the top tiers is Sunshine. Except just as he grabs onto the cliffside, he gets his hand stomped on by the menace of MGP2, Mountain. The Mountain is one of the 7 original Devil Chojin led by Buffalo Man, who appears in order to defeat the Justice Chojin, with the Mountain taking on Terry Man in a Grand Canyon deathmatch. As far as movesets go, Mountain is up there with Kinnikuman Big Body, since Aki basically had to cobble together a moveset out of nothing for him. Mountain's move pool in the original series was mainly just tanking hits and crushing guys. His supers are falling on you, and super falling on you. There had to be some changes made. Mountain is not great. We've talked about a lot of the difficulties that big bodies can face in this game, and Mountain is no exception. Even having some unique problems that keep him low even for a big body. Unlike a Scarface or Big the Budo, Mountain's range is pathetically small. His nubby little arms and legs making for poor pokes, and leaving his moves always falling short of their targets. The damage for those moves is at least incredible, with a 30 damage jab and 30 damage natural combo being better than some characters' entire damage output, Planet Man. His terrible range extends to his grabs, with the range being so small that confirming into them off of stray hits that even do good stun is difficult, usually requiring a short dash which gives the opponent a window to tech the throw and counterattack. That's something that the speed of the Mountain doesn't really allow for a counter to. Mountain has hefty startup on all of his moves. The quickest one is his running grab at 12 frames, but the majority of his strikes are 25 frames minimum, regularly lasting up into the mid-30s. Oh, but that's nothing compared to the recovery. Pro tip, don't ever use a move that takes the Mountain off of his feet, like his shoulder charge or dropkick. If you do, we're talking an entire 83 frames of recovery. It's minus 55 on block. Not like you're actually going to need to block it though, since Mountain's short range means he's just gonna miss. Another thing that Mountain shares with Scarface, aside from incredible damage with no way to properly execute it, is a lack of good supers to help with anything besides dealing damage. Mountain Roller is a pretty good OTG tool, but other than that, you have a slow punch, a pseudo barrier projectile, a grab that's strong but unwieldy, and a body splash that's nothing special. Now, despite everything I've told you, and how it sounds like that without his damage, Mountain would be even worse than Scarface or Planet Man, Mountain is still a scourge on MGP2. A character that has to be respected, feared, and played around if you're ever unlucky enough to encounter him. If Mountain is allowed to do as he wishes, there's nobody in the game that can beat him. And to do that, all he needs to do is grab you a single time. What's the move? Well, it's his final special move, 6-6S, Ground Impact. Now, projectiles are very rare in MGP2, and they're overall not great. Either you're Banky Man with debuffing toilet paper rolls, Atlantis with water balls that seem fine, until you compare how much damage it does versus how much meter it builds for the opponent, or you're Planet Man. And I think I've given enough examples on why you don't want to be that. So what makes Mountain any different? Well, his fireball is unique. First off, it's grounded. Grounded means not only is it a little harder to judge in terms of parry windows, but it can OTG. For those who aren't familiar with the term, it means off the ground. Basically, a move that can OTG can hit even if the opponent is laid out on the ground, where most moves won't work. A good example of OTGs in Muscle Grand Prix 2 include Phoenix's 8A or Zebra's 4-6S. But Ground Impact is special, as along with being grounded, it's a grounded multi-hitting projectile. Ground Impact has 8 hits dealing 30 damage each. And while standing, you're only going to be hit with about 2 of those hits, which means 60 damage. And OTG Ground Impact hits 5 times, meaning 150 damage. That's a lot! On par with most of Mountain's other supers, with the trade-off being those suck. Okay, so Mountain has one good special move. How's that so bad? Well, the most dangerous part of the move is that it has the same amount of active frames as it does recovery frames, meaning that while the opponent is stuck in hit stun, Mountain can launch out a second ground impact, which can lead to a third ground impact, which can lead to a fourth ground impact, which for the numerically inclined cashes out to around 600 damage if everything goes off perfectly for 8 bars of super. That's not counting the strikes or throw that the Mountain is using to get you on the ground, or his other OTG options like 2A or Ashi Kazuchi, meaning that off of a single throw, the Mountain can deal upwards of 700 damage. With the standard health being around 1000, that means Mountain only has to deal another 300 to put down a majority of the roster. He's also able to easily set up for this instant kill off of a teched grab, since a 6A grab is about the closest thing he's got to a combo, which, would you look at that, deals 240 damage, bringing the threshold of damage needed to about 60. Aki opened their third eye and played 4D chess by making the Mountain's best combo starter the opponent failing to lift him. Do you think we can retroactively give them more money for being that clever? This setup is infamous in MGP2. Anybody caught by the Mountain just had to hope he either hadn't dealt enough damage to finish them off, or wasn't going to deal enough damage. Other than that, you were going to lose. Mountain is a character who punished sloppy or unserious play with instant losses. One messed up throw or one stray hit could lead to the loss of an entire round. This left the community in kind of a conundrum when it came to ranking him. He's not good, not even remotely, but he wins. He wins in a way that no other character does, and fighting him isn't as easy as it reads on paper. As a result, Mountain was awkwardly shoved into S tier out of acknowledgement that he was very strong in a very specific situation. In recent times, though, players like Maxev, who, again, was a great help in making this section, have gotten much more comfortable placing Mountain lower on the tier list around B tier. The reason is one that affects a lot of characters like Mountain, who only have this one move. If you know what Mountain is trying to do, just don't let him do it. Don't grab him without setup so he can't tech it, and then he's helpless. Mountain's neutral game is wet ass. He can't do anything against somebody who stopped his one and only plan. Mountain is really similar to a character like Little Mac in Smash Bros. He's a knowledge check. A majority of his wins come from people who don't know how to stop the ground impact, and a majority of his losses come from people who do. The Mountain problem has mostly been solved by the community, but if you ever play sloppy against him, Mountain is going to make you feel it. And hey! Maybe he does a little better in Perfect Origin Arc. Only one way to find out. From a Japanese show I know everything about to one I pretty much know nothing about, it's Kamen Rider. That's right, despite all this, I don't actually know that much about Kamen Rider. I have the basics. At one point they were bug-themed. There's a gamer Kamen Rider, a Rider Jump, Rider Kick, Furbus. Am I missing anything? Really though, even if it lands completely out of my field of view, I know Kamen Rider is one of the longest lasting and most influential series to come out of Japan, going on for over 50 years. In that time, they've introduced dozens of different riders. And to stop the schoolyard beatings that would follow arguments of which Kamen Rider was stronger, I checked, it's this one, Bandai Namco released the Kamen Rider Climax Hero series. These are fighting games which take as many different riders from across the series as possible and stuffs them into one game to see how much the console can hold. I only played one entry, but the amount of characters, on top of different modes, transformations, and gimmicks for each character made my head spin. The one game that I did play was Kamen Rider Super Climax Heroes, released on the Wii and PSP in 2012, developed by Aiding. You might not recognize the name, but if you recognize any anime that was popular in the early 2000s, then you know who they are, because they made everything. I mean, they made Bleach games, Zoid games, Inuyasha games, Naruto games, Zatch Bell games, as well as other fighting games like Castlevania Judgment, Tatsunoko vs. Capcom, and even worked on Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3. Aiding is an unsung developer of fighting games, mostly down to the fact they can't balance a game to save their lives. Almost every game I mentioned has some sort of top tier who is unbelievably strong, whether it be Zero in UMVC 3, Zero in Tatsunoko vs. Capcom, and even characters who aren't Zero, like Shinoa in Castlevania Judgment. However, you'd never hear somebody call their games boring or unfun. Unbalanced, sure. But fighting games don't always have to be balanced to be enjoyable. Their games are always a sight to behold, and Super Climax Heroes is no different. It is one of the most absurd fighting games I've ever seen. Every character has a system tied to them that most other fighting games would build around, and sometimes a character gets multiple if they have different forms. This is incredible for representing the variety that makes the series as beloved as it is. And to make up for the complexities found in each character's gimmick, they made the actual fighting extremely simple, with the most you have to worry about being a Roman cancel. This definitely won't be the last time you see this game from me, because I am still trying to figure out what a Kamen Rider double Luna trigger is, but it looks illegal. The character we're going to be looking at, though, is my favorite Kamen Rider. I know I said I don't know anything about the series, but what's there to know about a detective Kamen Rider who's also a skeleton with a gun, scarf, and fedora? Kamen Rider Skull. Skull is actually from the same series as Luna Trigger, Kamen Rider Double. The Kamen Rider of that series is actually two guys, and one of them has a mentor named Narumi Sokichi, a hard-boiled detective who got the belt and memory core required to become Kamen Rider Skull, along with getting a gun called the Skull Magnum and a motorcycle called the Skull Boilder. I won't say much else for the sake of spoilers, but to fast forward a bit, his ultimate attack is sternly telling the opponent that they're f***ed before rider kicking a death ball in the shape of a skull at the opponent while aggressive guitar chords play. How the hell am I supposed to be excited for Kamen Rider Wizard after seeing this? Now, Skull isn't exactly a no-hoper like Mountain or Commando, but there's not a single person who plays this game that wouldn't tell you Skull doesn't live and die by a single move. So every character in the game has a unique button called a Rider Art. Pressing left trigger will give your rider something unique to do, either interacting with their gimmick or performing a special move. For example, Kamen Rider Black RX has the Finisher State, a special mode that will buff the next super move you use, on top of pausing the fight so the narrator can describe the attack like in the show. Kamen Rider the Bee gets a duck and dodge that lets him get to the other side of an opponent for mix-ups, while Kamen Rider Saga gets a super jump that lets him skip neutral. All three of these are shared with other riders, but there are unique ones, one of which belonging to our friend Skull. For Skull's rider art, he'll dash backwards and fire off a shot. This shot then triggers a 5-second long unskippable cutscene of the opponent crumbling to the ground before blowing up, taking a fifth of their health along with it. We're starting to get a little extreme with how good these moves are allowed to be. This rider art is absurdly easy to land in every situation. Up close, the thing's startup is practically nothing. You just have to throw it out while the opponent is standing and you'll be set. And it's so fast, they have no way to respond. It's also an incredible tool at threatening wake-ups. Delaying the move until the wake-up animation has already started is a great way to keep the opponent at a distance and on the floor. At that distance, still great, as at a moment's notice, any attempt at approaching Skull results in you losing 20% of your health. If you think dodging it is feasible, it's not, because the move is also extremely easy to combo into. 2HH, 6HHH, and the dash attack all combo perfectly into your rider art, which guarantees the damage on top of whatever you're getting from the combo itself. Okay, but there's the meter cost. Skull spends a fourth of his meter every time he uses the rider art, so he can't afford to spam it. He actually set aside a high-yield mutual fund to afford spamming it. Characters in Super Climax Hero come in a few different variant classes that give them different universal mechanics. And Skull is an assault character. Assault-type characters have something called an instant charge, where by pressing the special button after the end of a combo, like 2LHH, they'll get back a fourth of their meter instantly. And that's exactly as much as Skull needs to do another rider art, on top of the super that he gets from doing the combo in the first place. However, landing a combo requires landing a move. Why not simplify the process even further? Remember that Roman cancel I mentioned before? Well, it has a really funny interaction with the rider art. Pressing the right trigger right before the left trigger lets you cancel any move into rider art. Jab, rider art. Combo starter, rider art. Stray projectile, rider art. There's nothing that doesn't just funnel back into this singular move that defines Kamen Rider Skull. But like I said, he is not a hopeless character without it. He's a zoner, which, at the price of being reincarnated as a toilet when you die, does mean you're gonna have a really easy time just picking the opponent off with projectiles. Skull has a variety of light and heavy projectiles that make approaching him tough, including a move almost as good as his rider art in Jumping Special, which fires out a load of energy shots in a straight line, which again makes approaching him impossible. But what makes him a one-move wonder is that unlike somebody like Luna Trigger, who is also a god-tier zoner, all of these moves don't support rider art, they enable it. Just like how Mountain will always be fishing for ground impacts, or Commando will only ever use Corridor, you will almost never take an action as Skull without the intention of ending with rider art. Thanks to his absolutely oppressive zoning potential and high damage output, Skull is among the characters that have been banned from competitive play. Every major tier list composed by top players always keeps Skull there. No matter who else gets floated in or out, Skull is definitively too good, and it's all down to his rider art. Even his Mizumi page calls him the one-button god tier. This is a power reserved for characters who sold movie tickets just by telling people he was in the movie. Our final character yet again pushes the boundaries of what can be called a one-move wonder, because when you hear SNK boss, you don't think carried by one move. SNK bosses are a different breed of evil. Any argument about the merits of arcade game design and how it pushes you to perfect a game do not apply to these guys! They are bullies who might as well insert the quarters for you for how frustrating it is to lose to them. Sure, their bosses have super strong moves, and I won't blame anybody for thinking guys like Rugal or Genitz only had Genocide Cutter or Yonokaze, but they're all incredibly strong characters without their killer moves. There's one SNK boss, though, that doesn't quite fit the mold of total dominance, except for one move that's doing all the work for him. It's not Mukai from KOF 2003, it's not Pre-Patch Otomoraga from KOF 15, it's not even Orochi from KOF 97, most people's pick for the easiest SNK boss. The boss I'm talking about doesn't even come from a game you're likely to be familiar with. Art of Fighting is a fighting game franchise, and even that's pushing how much people know about it. If you ask people to name an SNK fighting franchise, most of them are going to give you Capcom vs. SNK. But they'll also throw out KOF, Fatal Fury, maybe Samurai Showdown. But as far as fighting game franchises go, Art of Fighting is always left in the dust, which I don't think is very fair. Art of Fighting tried a lot of unique stuff that made for a very thoughtful type of game. Having Super Meter be a push-and-pull mechanic thanks to debuffing taunts being a great example of that sort of thoughtfulness. There are also the aspects that are a lot more easy to appreciate, like the graphics, with the large and detailed character sprites giving a great amount of detail you didn't get from other fighting games. Both of the franchise's best aspects are on display in the third Art of Fighting game, Way of the Warrior, released in 1996. From a presentation standpoint, it may be the best pixel art SNK game they made before KOF 12, with every sprite getting an extra dose of fluidity thanks to the rotoscoping done to capture these amazing movements. Backgrounds also stand out as some of the best SNK stages ever. The Temple stage is up there with the Rain stage from KOF 99, it's that good. Gameplay-wise, it's again really fun. A common comparison with Art of Fighting 3 is to Virtua Fighter, thanks to its grounded but explosive gameplay, baiting the opponent to make a mistake and then capitalizing with a strong combo. Specials have been really de-emphasized, and instead most of your damage comes from playing smart. Characters like Kasumi, Lenny, and Kamen all showcasing that thoughtful style. And it makes for a game I'm really happy to see getting support from SNK again. $1 million prize pool. Okay, we're getting a little crazy, don't you think? But what if that brain of yours was just a burden? What if thought was just something you were using to remember which shoe goes on which foot? What if you'd rather die than learn emotion input? Well, Art of Fighting 3 has the answer, and its name is Wyler. Wyler is the game's final boss, the son of a scientist who was working on an elixir to grant limitless strength. But after the other scientist who was working on it, Dr. Lawrence, left and took his half of the formula, Wyler's dad became destitute and eventually died penniless, which drove Wyler to kidnap Lawrence's daughter Freya and get back the other half of the formula. After drinking it, he hulks out into his buff form for the final fight of arcade mode. Wyler isn't the toughest SNK boss. I know, a lot of good it is to get stabbed by the 20th sharpest knife, but compared to some of the worst cases of SNK boss syndrome, he's perfectly manageable. Also, unlike a lot of SNK bosses, he's selectable as a playable character. And it's here where Wyler gets really dangerous. Now, Wyler has a few unique traits as a boss character that help him out a lot. For instance, he can't be grabbed. He has the fastest recharge time on his special meter, and he's got a flat 8th damage reduction against every move in the game. These are all great, but they come with downsides. Wyler has no low attacks, no kicks, no crouching moves. He's so big that he can't not hit overhead. Wyler is also paradoxically the lightest character in the game, meaning juggling him is easy thanks to his huge hitbox and low weight. And most of his moves are pretty weak and slow. But there is one move that makes Wyler ban-worthy in competitive AOF 3. Is it his specials, like Blackout and Red Shoulder? No. Is it his desperation move? No, Wyler doesn't have one. Well, if it's not his specials, and It's not his desperation, and most of his moves aren't very good. What is it? Well, it's 5A. You might recognize that that is just Wyler's normal, unmodified standing jab. And you're right. Wyler has maybe the strongest jab in fighting games, with it being the move that actually makes him feel like a boss character. So how does it work? That is the hard part, because describing why the jab is so good is as easy as showing it. Look at that, pressing the button over and over again and they're already dead. Wyler's jab has a disgusting amount of damage tied to it. Double the game-wide average at about 250 to everybody else's 125. The range is enormous thanks to Wyler's size, and it's got the extremely annoying property of linking off itself infinitely as long as the opponent is within range. That means if you get too close to Wyler, you just lose half your health to an unrespondable chain that they're not going to drop unless they forget where the light attack button is. The move also only has a hitbox, but no hurt box, which means that trying to counter-hit Wyler is extremely difficult, but also means the jab itself is a great counter tool for somebody not spacing properly and getting frustrated about how they can't hit Wyler. Playing Wyler might be the most brain-dead that you'll ever feel while playing a fighting game, because the noob instinct to just mash one button over and over again is the game plan. This is why I think he's even more egregious than the previous examples. At least Commando requires planning a combo that uses Corridor. Mountain and Skull need you to set up their broken special moves. Wyler's broken move is one of his regular buttons, not even holding a direction or anything. That said though, Wyler does share something in common with Mountain, where he's extremely dominant if you don't know the secret. See, 5A really is Wyler's only worthwhile tool thanks to the game-wide drawbacks of special moves. So that means you never have to guess what Wyler's going to do next. He's going to try to bait you out with 5A and go for the string. And it's a strategy so basic that counterplay has been developed. Wyler's Mizumi page lists every character's counter for 5A in the 5A entry, along with listing more general weaknesses like the 24 recovery frames and the move being -11 on hit and -16 on block. Blocking the 5A string leaves Wyler wide open to a punish, and jumping in on a whiffed one is a great way to get past him. If this makes it sound easy to counter Wyler, trust me, he'll still tear you apart at the slightest mistake. With all the counterplay for every character discovered, except for Kamen, you might ask why Wyler is banned from a lot of tournaments. And it's interesting, he's not banned for being too good. Characters like Lenny and Kasumi are better. Direct Wyler counters. Wyler is banned because he's so goddamn boring and lame that he's a detriment to the health of the community. If Wyler is allowed in the game becomes how do you counter Wyler, which is not just unfun, but also drags down the player IQ of the whole scene by making the most important matchup so simple. Wyler might as well be cashing checks from Capcom for how much of a deterrent he is. A character so simple, he's banned just to try to make the game more interesting. If that doesn't make it the strongest poke in fighting games, I don't know what does.